the threat from within. I believe to this day, and I started, warning about it and talking about it, and said that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are the enemies within. That's the only perspective through which the whole insanity makes sense. And you could say it's insane, but it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's insane, but they are cutting massive amounts of jobs. And they are undermining our economy through tariffs. By they, I mean Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They are going after a very necessary programs that we have. They are essentially being and they're doing more damage to our country from the inside than any foreign enemy can do. And they are being pro-Putin. At least when you look at it from the Ukraine perspective, they're being pro-Putin. When you look at it from any perspective, when you look at it from the perspective that Putin's goal has been the demise of American democracy, and he wants to bring it down just like USSR was dissolved. There's this vengeance component of Vladimir Putin that Donald Trump either agrees with or he doesn't believe in it. If he doesn't believe in it, he's stupid, and I don't think he's stupid. So bringing down the American government and existing structures and ruling over the ashes, when you talk about doing away with the 22nd Amendment and having a third term, that's pro-authoritarian, that's pro-Putin. And my question is, are they getting directly influenced by Putin in some way? Because Donald was very defensive and didn't want to talk about any conversation he has had with Putin or not. And in his addled brain, maybe he's thinking he shouldn't be talking to Putin because Putin has been giving him these ideas. No, that's just me speculating, of course, and me wondering, because these moves are so much like dismantling and destroying our country from within categorically, and that no foreign enemy can do this kind of damage that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing right now. And that would line up with exactly what the Russian state media says, is that now American interests line up with the vision that we have. Their vision, Russian vision. Russia hasn't changed. They're still bombing Ukraine. So America's posture has completely changed. That's what Russian state TV is saying. So my question is he doing it directly, or is there, and if this is at the direction of Putin and we have been completely compromised, why? And if so, how? What's the leverage that Putin has against Donald Trump? But then who is going to investigate? We're just going to speculate, right? We're in a rut at the moment because some people believe that grocery prices were too high when they were on their way down. The people who didn't give the Democratic platform enough faith to govern, when Democrats are the only ones who have shown to have been able to govern for the last 25 years. Don't forget that Bush also left us with the mortgage crisis. I think it was a subprime mortgage crisis. And then there was TARP and all of that. Or was that the recession? I forget. But Bush drove our country and our economy to the ground, but not this deliberately, not this quickly, not this animously and maliciously. So we are in troubled waters now, because Donald Trump has just raised the tariffs on Canada, on Canadian steel. The markets are reflecting that by just dropping like a stone in water. And then he's declaring national emergency on electricity because the state of Ontario put a 25% tariff on electricity that it gives to the United States, that it exports to the United States. So Donald Trump is retaliated by going further and has then declared a national emergency on electricity. At this point, I don't know if this is a precursor for nationalizing energy companies, or it is a precursor to the drill baby drill marketing, which is saying we need to lower the cost of energy, and the only way to do that is indiscriminate drilling, even into wildlife reserves that are being safeguarded by environmental protection. We just learned today that they're eliminating EPA offices that address pollution in poor communities. What is to say that they're not going to take away and eliminate offices and of the EPA that addresses where the protection is needed in our vast federal lands, when Donald Trump goes drilling everywhere indiscriminately? So we see that happening. This form of chainsaw and bully politics, where Donald Trump and Elon Musk is still operating illegally because he's not been Senate confirmed. Doji is not a congressionally enacted statute or department. But Mike Johnson keeps saying that we're going to codify it. And then Marco Rubio, despite having that big fight in the Oval Office or in the White House with Elon Musk, essentially went down the list and said we're going to cut 83% of the U.S. aid programs that we have. But the money that the $2 billion that need to be released still, I don't hear any news of it, that the Supreme Court commanded that the government release, are for contracts that have already been fulfilled, about $2 billion, I'm sorry. So we have to keep pushing and seeing and calling our representatives to make sure that court order is enforced, and then making noise if it hasn't. Call your representatives and tell them this. So then we have SCOTUS on these constitutional issues. I've maintained that SCOTUS will side with Donald Trump whenever they can, but whenever Donald Trump's executive orders or his, arguments in front of the Supreme Court run straight into the Constitution and contravene the Constitution, like in birthright citizenship or the 22nd Amendment, or equal protection on the basis of sex, these are part of constitutional protections under the 14th Amendment. Then you have attacks on the press, attacks on educational institutions, cutting funding from educational institutions for their policies, and from states for their policies on transgender issues, and these are going to go up to the Supreme Court. So when that goes up to the Supreme Court, birthright citizenship, 22nd Amendment, the 14th Amendment, Donald Trump is likely to lose. The 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment due process, when it comes to discrimination on the basis of sex, is probably the weakest among those constitutional issues. And then there's the congressional constitutional issues of separation of powers and how Donald Trump is encroaching on Congress's lawmaking power, spending power, and Donald Trump has trampled over Senate's advice consent power. And there's a lot of relenting happening with the GOP there. We're not going to forget what's happening with MAGA. Sorry, saying GOP's force of habit. It's now MAGA. Education department is cutting half of the staff, undoing programs that have collaborated with local farms to provide schools with nutritious food. So on one hand, they are cutting half of the staff in the Department of Education, and on the other side, they're also cutting funds for food programs that pay local farms and also subsidize food for children who can't afford it at home because their families can't make ends meet because we don't have a livable wage, like Bernie Sanders keeps saying. Research cuts throughout our educational institution and the National Institute of Health, and military cuts, ponderings about Social Security cuts, all of these cuts just to pay for the tax cut to the rich, to make that permanent and to extend that. Tax cut to the people who don't need it are 0.1% of Americans who make millions and millions of dollars a year, if not billions. People like Elon Musk make billions, and they find tax loopholes to pay a smidgen of tax. So that is what we really have coming for us when we have these cuts. But, Donald Trump would side with oligarchs and billionaires and multi-billionaires and tax cut for the rich and never a tax hike for them. But for the rest of us, we have to live in a subpar country without the services that the government provides because it can't pay us or authorize the payment of a minimum federal wage, of livable wage. Then you have Donald Trump's relationship with Canada. It's worsening. You see, and with the mix of all of this, you are seeing that MAGA politicians are avoiding town halls, where I'm thankful Democrats are coming in and speaking with the people who really are now feeling the implications of Donald Trump's second reign. I want to talk to you briefly about the measles outbreak. It is now news that New York has a measles case, and there's an Oklahoma measles case that is linked to the Texas outbreak, and New Mexico. So now we have New York, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. But RFK Jr., Bobby Jr. is talking about vitamin A with Sean Hannity. They're just plugging in that little bit that there are vaccines available, but then covering it up with so much misinformation, and I would say disinformation about vaccines, and then talking more and more about sort of alternatives like vitamin A. That is the biggest dereliction of duty and betrayal of the American people that I've seen in recent memory. And that is like going back a week now, seeing as how Donald Trump is moving, eliminating the EPA offices. He doesn't care about the poor. He only cares about the oligarchs. EPA offices that address pollution in poor communities. How much more oligarchic, aristocratic, despotic can you get? That said, I want you to keep your eyes on the news. I want you to call your representatives and senators and tell them that, listen, we are going into a recession right now. We need to start thinking about fulfilling our commitments and hunkering down, because 4 months ago, we didn't have a recession. There was a 0% chance when Biden was president. But still, they're trying to blame the recession that is coming under Trump's presidency on President Biden. They badmouthed President Biden's presidency for a long time, and even, the Wall Street Journal was skeptical of it for a time. But then by the end of Biden's presidency, it was 100% surety that there was going to be no recession. No one even talked about it. The economy was doing great. They were adding jobs even when they were not supposed to be adding jobs. But then Donald Trump took reins, and then Elon Trump went in with Doji and started cutting jobs, started cutting money in the name of saving and efficiency, when all it is doing is running our government aground, making it difficult for people to get the services they need. And in the veterans' cases, not only do they deserve, but the American government owes it to them. So here's me rounding up for you the crises that we are facing every single day. Obviously, I probably forgot talking about some issue because there are so many every day. But be outraged by them. Contact your representatives and your senators. Write to them. Call them. And be engaged in your community. Go to these town halls. Make your grievances known. Peaceably protest. Whatever protest you think is going to make a difference in however little incremental way that you can. Remain safe, remain vigilant, conserve your resources, observe what's happening. Exercise restraint when confrontations are possible, but remain steadfast and courageous in holding up there and standing your ground and speaking truth to power. Peaceful, nonviolent protest. Gathering in town halls, peaceably assembling, and have grievances heard, and come together and realize that Donald Trump has betrayed us all and Elon Musk is an enemy of the state. With that said, thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I will talk to you soon.